My grandmother's handwriting was the most beautiful thing I had ever seen. She wrote in that old-fashioned cursive, the kind they stopped teaching in schools before I was born, with loops on the L's and long, elegant tails on every Y. Growing up, she used to leave me notes tucked inside my lunch bag. Little things. "You're braver than you know, sweetheart." Or just, "I see you." I kept every single one of them in a shoebox under my bed until I was 26 years old and finally accepted that some things you carry with you because they're the only proof that someone once really looked at you. My grandmother passed in October. Pancreatic cancer. 6 weeks from diagnosis to gone, that's how fast it happened. I was with her at the end, holding her hand while my mother stood in the doorway of the hospital room checking her phone. I noticed that. I noticed everything, always. That was my problem, according to my family. I was too sensitive. I saw things that weren't there. I read into situations. What they meant was, I remembered. Her name was Harriet. She was 79 years old and she had spent 40 of those years building something. Not just money. Though yes, there was money, the house in Scottsdale worth somewhere around $800,000, the investment portfolio my grandfather had set up before he died, the savings account she'd been adding to every month since 1987. But what she actually built was a standard, a way of being in the world. Work hard, tell the truth, protect the people who can't protect themselves. She left the house to me. Not to my mother. Not to my aunt. Not split evenly between the three of us. The way my mother had been telling anyone who would listen for the last decade was obviously the right and fair thing to do. To me. Specifically. By name. In a notarized will that her estate attorney, a quiet man named Mr. Dickey Aldridge, had been holding in his office in a sealed envelope for 4 years. I knew about the will. My grandmother had told me herself, sitting on her back porch the summer I turned 28, drinking sweet tea and watching the sun go down over the desert. She told me she had made her decision a long time ago. She told me why. And then she looked at me over the rim of her glass and said, "Don't let them take it from you. They will try." I didn't fully understand what she meant at the time. I do now. My mother's name is Bonnie. She's 57 and she has never in her life been told no by anyone who didn't immediately regret it. She has a way of making you feel like the difficult one, like you're the problem in every room you walk into together, like your very presence is an inconvenience she's graciously tolerating. I grew up believing that about myself. It took me until my late 20s to understand that the story she told about me was just the story that was convenient for her. My aunt's name is Lorraine. She's 3 years younger than my mother, and she has spent her entire adult life in my mother's shadow, agreeing with everything my mother says, laughing at everything my mother laughs at, wanting everything my mother wants. She is not a cruel person on her own. But next to my mother, she becomes one, and then there was my cousin Donovan. Donovan is 31. He dropped out of 2 colleges, has been fired from more jobs than I can count, and has owed my grandmother money since 2019, $40,000 he borrowed to start a business that lasted approximately 4 months before he spent the remaining capital on a truck he didn't need and a trip to Vegas he definitely didn't need. My grandmother never asked for it back. She just quietly, carefully began removing him from things. I am 32 years old. I work as a contract attorney specializing in real estate law. I have spent the last 6 years reading documents for a living, understanding what language means, what it doesn't mean, where the loopholes are, and where the floors hold. I say this not to brag. I say it because it matters for what comes next. The will reading was scheduled for Thursday morning, 3 weeks after my grandmother's funeral. Mr. Aldridge's office was in a beige building off Camelback Road. The kind of place with low ceilings and framed desert landscapes on the walls, and a receptionist who offered you water in a tiny paper cup when you walked in. My mother called me the Wednesday night before. She didn't ask how I was doing. She never did. She called to tell me what to wear, something appropriate, and to remind me that we were family and that family handled things together and that whatever was in that will, we would figure it out as a unit. She said the word unit like it meant something. Like we had ever been one. "I'll be there at 10, I said. "Sweetheart." Her voice went soft. That particular soft, the soft that had cost me more times than I could count. "I just want you to go in with an open mind." "I always do, Mom." I hung up and sat in my kitchen for a long time. Here's what I had done over the previous 3 weeks while my mother was busy telling her friends about the estate situation and my aunt was calling relatives to discuss what was fair. I had gone to Mr. Brett Aldridge's office alone 10 days after the funeral and asked to review the will in my capacity as a beneficiary and a licensed attorney. Mr. Aldridge was a careful man. He let me read it in full. I took notes. I confirmed the property transfer language was clean and specific. I confirmed my name was the only name on the house. Then I went to the Maricopa County Recorder's office and I filed a notice of beneficiary interest with a copy of the relevant will provisions properly certified. It was a routine procedural step, the kind of thing most people don't know to do. What it meant was that any subsequent attempt to transfer, encumber, or otherwise affect title to that property would generate an automatic alert to me and to the recording office. I also called my grandmother's financial institution and, with Mr. Towder Aldridge's authorization as a state attorney, established myself as the state's designated contact for any inquiries about accounts held in trust. Then I went home and I waited. The Thursday morning was bright and already warm the way Scottsdale mornings are in November, that particular blue sky clarity that people move there for. I wore a black blazer and I got there early enough to have actual coffee from a place down the street, not the paper cup water. My mother arrived with my aunt. They were dressed like they were attending a charity luncheon. Lorraine had on a pearl necklace. My mother had done her hair. Donovan came in 3 minutes late with his hands in his pockets, looked around the room like he was scoping the place out, and sat down without saying hello to me. Mr. Aldridge read the will in full. He had a measured, unhurried voice. He read the part about the personal effects, divided among family members in specific categories. He read the part about the investment accounts, a portion of which went to a children's literacy foundation my grandmother had supported for years. And then he read the part about the house. My mother's face went completely still. Not sad, not surprised exactly. More like recalculating, like a machine running a new equation. "That can't be right," Lorraine said. She looked at my mother. My mother didn't look at her. She was looking at me. "We'll need to review the document," my mother said. Her voice was very controlled. "I'd like our own attorney to look at this." "Of course," Mr. Aldridge said. "You're welcome to contest the will through the appropriate legal channels. I should let you know that the document was prepared 4 years ago, signed and notarized with 2 witnesses. Mrs. Harriet confirmed its contents with me as recently as 8 months ago. 8 months ago she wasn't well," my mother said. "She was, actually," Mr. Aldridge said gently. "I have documentation of that as well." My mother stood up. She thanked Mr. Aldridge in that clipped, professional way she had. The tone that wasn't really thanks, just a performance of composure. She told me she'd call me later. She didn't look at me when she said it. Donovan, on his way out, stopped beside my chair. "You know this isn't over," he said. I looked up at him. I kept my expression very neutral, the way I'd learned in depositions. "Have a good day, Donovan." He left. I stayed and finished reviewing the transfer paperwork with Mr. Aldridge. By the time I walked out into the November sun, a certified copy of the will was in my bag, and the property transfer process had formally begun. 3 days later, my mother called again. This time there was no softness. She told me that the will was clearly made under undue influence, that I had manipulated an elderly woman, that I had always been manipulative, that Grandma Harriet had been lonely and I had taken advantage of that. She said the house should have been divided equally and that I was being selfish and that my grandmother would be ashamed of me. I listened. I had learned a long time ago not to argue with her when she was like this. Arguing just gave her more material. "I hear you, Mom," I said. "Don't do that," she said. "Don't use that therapy voice on me." "I'll talk to you soon," I said. I hung up. Over the next 2 weeks, I received 4 emails from an attorney my mother had hired, a man whose letterhead I recognized from a firm that handled a lot of probate disputes, the kind of firm that knew how to generate paper and create delay. The emails were formal and aggressive in the way those letters are, full of language about contesting the will on grounds of undue influence and lack of testamentary capacity. I read each one carefully. I sent them to my own attorney, a woman I trusted, and I told her to monitor the situation. Then I got the recording office alert. It came on a Tuesday evening. An email notification from Maricopa County. A document affecting the property had been submitted for recording. The document was a quitclaim deed. A quitclaim deed bearing my name as grantor, meaning someone had submitted paperwork that appeared to show me voluntarily signing over my ownership of the property. I pulled up the document image. It was good work, technically. The notary stamp looked real. The signature looked like mine, close enough that most people wouldn't catch it, but I had not signed any quitclaim deed. I had not been before any notary. I had not transferred anything to anyone. I stared at my laptop screen for a moment. Then I picked up my phone and called my attorney. It was 7:15 in the evening. She answered on the second ring. "They filed a fraudulent quitclaim deed," I said. She was quiet for 2 seconds. "Send me the document image." I did. "Okay," she said. "Here's what we do." What we did was move quickly and on multiple tracks. First, she filed an immediate challenge to the recording. An affidavit of forgery with the county recorder's office with a copy of my legitimate notarized signature for comparison, along with a sworn statement that I had not executed the deed. Recording offices take forged instruments seriously. The fraudulent deed was flagged and suspended within 48 hours. Second, she contacted the notary whose stamp appeared on the deed. The notary, when reached, was confused and alarmed. Her stamp had apparently been used without her knowledge or authorization. She cooperated fully. Third, and this is the part I want you to understand, because this is the part my family did not see coming. I had already been in contact with the Maricopa County Attorney's Office 3 days earlier. Not about the quitclaim deed. I hadn't known about that yet. I had contacted them about something else, a series of communications I had documented over the previous 2 weeks, suggesting that my mother and my aunt were planning to take actions outside of the legitimate probate contest process. I hadn't had proof of the fraud yet, but I had enough to put the right people on notice. When the forged deed appeared, the county attorney's office already knew my name. My attorney made one phone call. The investigation opened the same week. My mother didn't know any of this was in motion. She texted me on a Thursday. Ironic, I thought, that it was a Thursday again, asking if I wanted to have lunch. "Just us," she wrote. "I think we need to talk, sweetheart." That soft word again. I went. I want to be honest about why I went. Not because I thought she had changed. Not because I believed the sweetness. I went because I had spoken to my attorney that morning, and she had told me that if my mother said anything about the property, the deed, or the transfer, it would be useful. I was wearing a smartwatch that day. I am a contract attorney. I understand the recording laws in Arizona. We met at a restaurant in Scottsdale, the kind with white tablecloths and a lunch crowd of retired people and real estate professionals. My mother was already there when I arrived. She looked tired. That was new. She was usually so careful about how she presented herself. She waited until after we'd ordered. Then she reached across the table and put her hand over mine. "I need you to think about the family," she said, "what this is doing to all of us." "I'm listening, Mom." "The house was supposed to take care of all of us. Your grandmother knew that. She got confused near the end. She was alone so much. You were always there. She was grateful to you, and she got confused." "She wasn't confused," I said. "She knew exactly what she was doing." My mother's jaw tightened, just slightly. "I'm asking you to do the right thing. Sign the house over. Take your portion. We'll give you a fair share, I promise. We're not trying to cut you out, we just want what's right." "Sign it over to whom?" I said. "To the estate, to be divided properly." "Mom," I said, and I kept my voice very even, "someone already filed a quitclaim deed with my forged signature. Did you know about that?" The hand on mine went very still. "I don't know what you're talking about," she said. "The deed was filed 2 weeks ago. The county recorder flagged it as fraudulent. There's an investigation open." She pulled her hand back. She picked up her water glass. She took a slow sip. "You should talk to an attorney," she said. Finally. "I have one," I said. "I've had one this whole time." We finished the lunch largely in silence. She was composed, my mother. Even then, even knowing what she knew, she was composed. She kissed me on the cheek when we parted. She told me to drive safe. I sat in my car for a few minutes before I started the engine. I thought about my grandmother's notes. "I see you, sweetheart." I thought about the way she'd looked at me on that back porch, the sweet tea and the desert light, and said they will try. She had known. She had known her own daughter for 57 years, and she had known exactly what she was, and she had spent 4 years quietly, methodically making sure there was nothing left to take. She had trusted me to hold the line. The investigation moved faster than I expected. Within 6 weeks, the county attorney had identified the notary stamp theft. Lorraine had been at the notary's office on a different matter earlier that year and had photographed the stamp with her phone. The handwriting analysis on the forged signature came back definitively not mine, and text messages recovered during the investigation showed a chain of planning between my mother, my aunt, and Donovan going back to the week of my grandmother's funeral. They had started talking about it before she was even buried. My mother was charged with filing a fraudulent real property instrument, a Class 4 felony in Arizona. Lorraine was charged as an accessory. Donovan, who had apparently been the one to locate the notary and obtain her information, was charged with identity fraud and forgery. They all hired attorneys, of course. The process took time. I won't pretend it was clean or quick or emotionally simple. There were months of it. The legal proceedings, the family members who called me asking me to drop the charges or reduce my cooperation, the cousin I hadn't spoken to in years who sent me a long Facebook message about forgiveness and family and how Grandma Harriet would want us to be together. I didn't respond to that one. My mother called me from her attorney's office during the plea negotiation phase. She told me that if I asked the prosecutor to pursue the minimum, she would acknowledge what she had done, that she was sorry, that she had let fear and greed turn her into someone she didn't recognize. I listened to her say it. I waited until she was finished. "I hope you mean that," I said. "I genuinely do." I did not ask the prosecutor to pursue the minimum. My mother received 30 months of supervised probation and a significant fine. Lorraine received 18 months probation. Donovan took a plea deal that included restitution payments, some portion of which, by a specific provision in the agreement my attorney insisted on, went toward the $40,000 he had never repaid to my grandmother's estate. That part gave me some satisfaction. I'm not going to pretend it didn't. The house closed into my name on a Tuesday in late spring. I drove to Scottsdale that evening after work and sat in the driveway for a while before I went inside. The desert air smelled like warm dust and something floral I couldn't identify. The neighbor 2 doors down was watering her yard. She waved at me. Inside, my grandmother's furniture was still there. The estate process had preserved most of it pending resolution of the legal issues, and now it was mine to sort through. I walked through the room slowly, her reading chair by the window, the kitchen table where I'd sat across from her 100 times, the back porch where we'd had the conversation I would carry for the rest of my life. I sat down on the porch steps. The sun was going down over the desert, and the light was that particular gold that happens in Arizona in May, the kind that makes everything look briefly, extravagantly beautiful. I was thinking about what it means to inherit something, not the legal definition, which I know precisely, but what it actually means. What gets passed down, what holds. My grandmother wrote me notes my whole childhood because she saw me being made to feel invisible, and she decided that was not going to be the whole story. She spent 4 years building a legal structure to protect what she wanted to give me because she knew her daughter and she was not naive about it. She loved her family and she was not blind to them. She held both of those things at the same time. I think about that a lot. There are days the house feels like a weight. There are days it feels like a gift. There are days it just feels like a house, a 3-bedroom, 2-bath in Scottsdale with good light in the mornings and a neighbor who waves. Most days I think, she saw me. She made sure I couldn't be unseen. That was what she left me, really. The house was just the vessel. I still have the notes from my lunch bag in a shoebox. I moved the shoebox here. I think she would have liked that. People ask me sometimes if I regret not giving them a chance to stop. If I wish I had warned my mother before the investigation opened, given her a way out before it became something that went on a permanent record. I understand why people ask that. It feels like the compassionate question, but here's the thing I keep coming back to. They had chances. Bonnie had the chance to grieve her mother honestly instead of calculating inheritance at the graveside. Lorraine had the chance to say no when someone handed her a plan that required stealing a notary stamp and forging her niece's name on a legal document. Donovan had the chance, multiple chances across multiple years, to be someone other than who he kept choosing to be. The choices that led to that courthouse were not made in a moment of panic. They were made slowly, deliberately, over weeks and months. by people who understood exactly what they were doing and decided to do it anyway because they believed I wouldn't be prepared. That's what I think about when people ask if I'm sad about how it ended. I'm not sad, I'm clear. My grandmother understood something that took me a long time to learn, that love and clarity are not opposites. She loved her daughter. She also saw her daughter precisely, without the softening filter that wishful thinking puts over people we want to be different than they are. She didn't write Bonnie out of her life. She just made sure that the one thing she most wanted to protect was protected by something stronger than hope. She spent 4 years building a legal structure because she was wise enough to know that wisdom without preparation is just a nice feeling. I think about the notes in my lunch bag, the ones that said I see you. I used to read those as affection, and they were that. But now I read them differently. I think she was also teaching me something, that being seen is not passive. It requires someone willing to look clearly, and it requires you to stay visible even when the people around you are invested in making you small. My mother spent 30 years trying to convince me that I was too sensitive, too much, not quite right. The version of me she needed to exist was one who wouldn't notice, wouldn't remember, wouldn't prepare. I noticed, I remembered, I prepared. That's not something I'm proud of as an act of cleverness. I'm proud of it as an act of self-respect. There's a version of this story where I walked into that will reading unprepared, where the forged deed sat in the recording system for weeks before I found out, where I spent years in litigation while my mother's attorneys generated delay, and I drained my own savings fighting for something that was already legally mine. That version of me would have been easier for everyone else. She would have been the good daughter, the forgiving one, the one who kept the family together at her own expense. I've been her before. I know how that story ends. What I know now, what this whole thing taught me in a way nothing else could, is that integrity is not just about doing the right thing in the open. It's about doing the right thing in the quiet months when no one is watching. Filing that notice with the recorder's office, making that call to the county attorney before I had proof, reading every document twice. Those were not dramatic moments. They were Tuesday afternoon moments, unglamorous and careful, and they were the whole ball game. My grandmother was the most ethical person I ever knew, and she was also the most prepared. She understood that those two things go together, that good intentions without structure are just wishes, and that protecting what matters requires you to think clearly even when you're grieving, even when you're being told you're wrong, even when the people doing the most damage are the ones you used to love most. I sit on that back porch sometimes and I think about what she'd say. I don't think she'd say she was proud of me for winning. I think she'd say she was proud of me for not pretending. That's the thing I want to carry forward, not the outcome, the practice. See clearly, prepare quietly, hold the line.